The battlefield was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of alien machinery and the occasional distant rumble that seemed to echo across planets. Captain Theo Alden crouched behind a crumbling wall on an uncharted moon, his breath shallow as he tried to steady himself after the skirmish. His helmet visor was cracked, and sweat trickled down his temples, but he didn't dare remove it. This planet's atmosphere wasn't exactly human-friendly. Across the clearing stood her. She wasn't like anything Theo had ever seen before. Her skin shimmered with hues of silver and gold, catching the dim light from the twin suns overhead. Her hair floated around her head in delicate tendrils, defying gravity, glowing faintly blue at the tips. She wore armor made of some unknown material that looked both impossibly strong and breathtakingly elegant. It hugged her form perfectly, accentuating every curve while somehow radiating authority. But what caught Theo's attention most were her eyes, large, almond-shaped, and filled with galaxies swirling within them. They held power, wisdom, and something else he couldn't quite place. Perhaps curiosity? "Wow," Theo whispered softly, unaware that his voice carried through the stillness of the air. "She is so gorgeous. I wish I had a wife like her." Unbeknownst to him, the alien princess standing mere meters away heard every word. Princess Lyra Velath of the Zentari Empire tilted her head slightly, intrigued by this strange creature who dared to speak such thoughts aloud. Humans were known for their boldness, or arrogance, depending on whom you asked, but she hadn't expected one to vocalize admiration so openly. And yet, there was no malice in his tone, only awe. Lyra straightened, brushing off imaginary dust from her armor. She had been observing these humans for weeks now, studying their tactics during this prolonged conflict between their species and hers. They were fascinating beings, fragile compared to her kind, yet fiercely determined. This particular soldier, Captain Alden, if her intel was correct, had proven especially resourceful. He led small squads into dangerous missions, often turning the tide against overwhelming odds. His bravery intrigued her almost as much as his appearance did. Unlike many of his comrades, whose faces were obscured by bulky helmets, Alden had removed his earlier, revealing sharp features marred by scars earned in countless battles. Her translator device buzzed faintly inside her earpiece, translating his words flawlessly. The phrase, "wife like her," confused her slightly. The concept of marriage among humans varied wildly depending on cultural context. Still, she understood enough to grasp the sentiment behind his statement. A flicker of amusement crossed her face, though she quickly masked it. Such honesty could be dangerous in war, even if it came from someone who clearly meant no harm. Meanwhile, Theo froze mid-breath when he realized his words might have carried further than intended. He glanced up cautiously, meeting the gaze of the very being he'd just admired. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Those galaxy-filled eyes locked onto his, pinning him in place. He swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how ridiculous he must sound, a grizzled soldier reduced to gawking like a lovesick teenager. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of anger or disdain, Lyra gave him the slightest nod, almost imperceptible. Was that approval? Or maybe acknowledgement? Whatever it was, it sent a jolt through Theo's system, leaving him more flustered than ever. Their standoff was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Both turned sharply toward the noise, instinctively reaching for their weapons. Out of the shadows emerged Lieutenant Jax Corrin, Theo's second-in-command, followed closely by two other members of their squad. Jax raised an eyebrow at the tense scene unfolding before him but said nothing, wisely choosing not to ask why his captain appeared ready to either fight or flee. "We need to move, sir," Jax murmured, keeping his voice low. "Reinforcements are incoming." Theo nodded briskly, tearing his gaze away from Lyra. "Right. Let's regroup near the extraction point." As they began retreating, he cast one last glance over his shoulder, only to find the alien princess watching them leave. There was no hostility in her stance, merely quiet observation. It unnerved him more than any weapon ever could. Back at the temporary base camp, Theo sat hunched over a makeshift table, staring blankly at a map illuminated by holographic projections. Around him, the rest of the team bustled about, tending to wounds, repairing equipment, and strategizing their next move. Despite the chaos, his mind kept drifting back to the encounter with Lyra. What had she thought of his comment? Had she understood it fully? More importantly, why did it matter so much to him? "You've got that look again," Jax remarked, plopping down beside him with a steaming cup of synthetic coffee. "The one where you're either plotting world domination or obsessing over something stupid." "It's nothing," Theo muttered, waving dismissively. But Jax knew better. Over the years, they developed a bond akin to brothers, forged in the fires of countless battles. Jax leaned closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Does this nothing happen to be related to our shiny-skinned friend out there?" he teased, waggling his eyebrows suggestively. Theo groaned, burying his face in his hands. "I said it doesn't matter." Jax chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. "Oh, come on, Theo. You can't blame me for being curious. She's not exactly your usual type. Most women tend to have fewer, cosmic swirls in their eyes." "That's not funny," Theo snapped, though there was no real heat behind his words. Truthfully, he found Lyra mesmerizing, not just because of her appearance, but because of the mystery surrounding her. Who was she really? Why was she leading her forces personally instead of delegating command? And why, despite everything, did he feel drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain? As if summoned by his thoughts, alarms blared throughout the camp. Everyone scrambled to their feet, grabbing weapons and preparing for another attack. Theo cursed under his breath, scanning the horizon for signs of movement. Sure enough, a fleet of sleek alien ships descended rapidly, their engines roaring like thunder. "Here we go again," Jax muttered grimly, loading his rifle. Theo clenched his jaw, determination replacing his earlier distraction. Whatever questions lingered in his mind would have to wait. Right now, survival took priority. The battle raged on relentlessly, each side refusing to yield. Bullets ricocheted off metallic surfaces, energy blasts lit up the sky, and cries of pain echoed through the battlefield. Through it all, Theo fought with renewed vigor, driven by a mix of desperation and frustration. Every time he caught sight of Lyra amidst the chaos, she moved with grace and precision, commanding her troops with unwavering confidence. She was a force to be reckoned with, and Theo couldn't help but admire her skill, even as he aimed his weapon in her direction. At one point, their paths crossed dangerously close. They exchanged fire, dodging and weaving through debris littering the ground. Finally, they found themselves face to face, weapons trained on each other, chests heaving from exertion. For a heartbeat, neither moved, locked in a silent standoff. "You intrigue me, human," Lyra said finally, her voice melodic yet firm. Thanks to advanced translation technology embedded in their suits, communication barriers dissolved instantly. "And you terrify me," Theo admitted honestly, though his grip on his rifle never faltered. "But I suppose that's part of the package." A hint of a smile played on Lyra's lips. Fear and fascination often go hand in hand. Before either could say more, a massive explosion rocked the area, sending shockwaves rippling outward. Instinctively, Lyra dove forward, tackling Theo to the ground just as shrapnel flew past where they'd been standing moments ago. They landed in a heap, her body shielding his from harm. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, inches apart. Time slowed once more, the sounds of battle fading into background noise. Up close, Theo noticed tiny details he hadn't before: the faint iridescence of her eyelashes, the intricate patterns etched into her armor, the warmth emanating from her despite her alien nature. "Thank you," he breathed, unsure whether gratitude or disbelief colored his tone more. Lyra blinked slowly, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, she rolled off him and sprang to her feet, disappearing into the fray as swiftly as she'd appeared. When the dust settled hours later, both sides retreated to lick their wounds. Back at the human encampment, Theo paced restlessly, replaying the events in his mind. Saving his life. That act alone complicated things beyond measure. How could he reconcile fighting against someone who had shown him mercy? Yet, how could he abandon his duty to protect humanity? Jax watched him from afar, shaking his head knowingly. Love, or whatever this bizarre attraction was, always made people act irrationally. Even soldiers. Little did they know, Lyra wrestled with similar turmoil. In the privacy of her quarters aboard her flagship, she replayed their brief encounter repeatedly. Never before had she encountered a human capable of eliciting such conflicting emotions. Respect, curiosity, even affection, all foreign concepts in the midst of war. Yet, here they were, tangled together inextricably. Neither side realized that fate had already begun weaving threads destined to bind them closer than either imagined possible. The next morning, an unexpected transmission arrived at the human encampment. It wasn't a declaration of war or another tactical maneuver. It was a message from Princess Lyra herself. Her holographic form materialized in the center of their command tent, shimmering with an ethereal glow that made everyone instinctively straighten up. Even Theo, who had been slouched over a map covered in scribbles and coffee stains, found himself standing tall. "Humans," she began, her voice commanding yet measured, "I propose a temporary ceasefire. There is something we must discuss, something that concerns both our peoples." The room erupted into murmurs of disbelief. A ceasefire? From the Zentari princess herself? It sounded too good to be true. Jax leaned over to Theo, whispering sarcastically, "What's next?" "Dinner invitations." But Theo didn't laugh. His eyes were locked onto Lyra's hologram, searching for any sign of deception. She met his gaze unflinchingly, those galaxy-filled eyes betraying nothing but sincerity. Or so it seemed. "What do you want to discuss?" Theo asked cautiously, stepping forward. The others fell silent, deferring to him as their leader. Lyra tilted her head slightly, a gesture that somehow managed to convey both curiosity and authority. "There are matters beyond this conflict that require cooperation. Meet me at the neutral zone in 6 hours. Come alone, or don't come at all." Before anyone could respond, her image dissolved into thin air, leaving behind a heavy silence. 6 hours later, Theo stood on the edge of the designated neutral zone, a barren stretch of land marked by jagged rocks and swirling dust storms. He adjusted the strap of his rifle nervously, though he knew bringing a weapon might undermine the spirit of the meeting. Still, old habits died hard. Lyra appeared moments later, emerging from her sleek hovercraft like a vision out of myth. She wore simpler attire this time, a flowing robe-like garment that shimmered faintly under the dim light of the twin suns. Despite its elegance, the outfit looked practical enough for combat if needed, a detail Theo appreciated more than he cared to admit. "You came," she said, her tone neutral but tinged with approval. "I'm here," Theo replied evenly. "Now tell me why I shouldn't consider this some elaborate trap." Lyra smiled faintly, crossing her arms over her chest. "Because I saved your life yesterday, and because you intrigue me just as much as I seem to intrigue you." Her bluntness caught him off guard. Before he could formulate a response, she continued, "This war between our species serves no one. My people grow weary of fighting, and yours, well, let's just say your resources are dwindling faster than you'd like to admit." Theo clenched his jaw. As much as he hated to admit it, she wasn't wrong. Supplies were running low, morale was shaky, and reinforcements were delayed indefinitely. But surrendering wasn't an option, not while there was still breath in his lungs. "So what's your solution?" he demanded, trying to mask his unease. "A peace treaty signed over tea and biscuits?" Lyra chuckled softly, the sound musical yet oddly disarming. "Not quite. What I have in mind is far more unconventional." She gestured toward her ship, where a team of Zentari scientists was unloading several crates. Inside them were strange devices Theo had never seen before, metallic orbs pulsating with blue energy, each emitting a soft hum that resonated deep within his bones. "These are harmonizers," Lyra explained. "They're designed to bridge the gap between our species, not just linguistically, but emotionally. By syncing neural pathways, they allow us to understand each other on a fundamental level." Theo frowned, suspicion creeping into his voice. "And why would you share such technology with us? What's the catch?" Lyra's expression turned serious. "Because I believe our survival depends on it. Both our races face extinction, not from each other, but from something far greater." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of urgency. "There's a cosmic anomaly approaching our sector, an entity capable of consuming entire star systems. If we don't work together, None of us will survive." Theo stared at her, torn between skepticism and dread. Was this some elaborate ploy to gain humanity's trust? Or was she telling the truth? Either way, the implications were staggering. "And how do I know this isn't just another trick?" he challenged. Lyra stepped closer, closing the distance between them until they were mere inches apart. For a moment, Theo forgot how to breathe. Up close, her presence was overwhelming, not intimidating, but magnetic, as if she commanded the very fabric of reality around her. "You'll have to trust me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Or we'll all perish." Back at the encampment, Theo relayed the information to his superiors via encrypted channels. Predictably, they were skeptical. Some dismissed Lyra's claims outright, accusing her of psychological warfare. Others argued that even if the threat was real, trusting the Zentari was tantamount to suicide. "It's a risk," Theo admitted during the heated debate. "But it's also our best chance. If what she says is true, then we can't afford to ignore it." Jax, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "Even if we agree to use these harmonizer things, how do we know they won't fry our brains instead of sinking them? Sounds like sci-fi mumbo-jumbo to me." Theo sighed, rubbing his temples. "We don't. But sitting here arguing won't change anything. We need to make a decision, and soon." After hours of deliberation, the council reluctantly agreed to test the harmonizers, but only under strict supervision. A small team, led by Theo, would undergo the procedure alongside a group of Zentari volunteers. If successful, they'd move forward with negotiations. If not, well, no one wanted to think about that. The testing facility was set up in the neutral zone, a neutral location chosen to ease tensions. Scientists from both sides worked side by side, calibrating the harmonizers with painstaking precision. Theo watched silently as one of the orbs was placed against his temple, its cool surface sending shivers down his spine. "This won't hurt," Lyra assured him, standing nearby. "But it may feel unusual." He nodded grimly, bracing himself for whatever came next. As the device activated, a surge of energy coursed through his body, flooding his mind with images, emotions, and sensations that weren't his own. At first, it was overwhelming, a cacophony of alien thoughts and memories threatening to drown him. But gradually, the chaos subsided, replaced by clarity. When Theo opened his eyes, everything felt different. He could sense the emotions of those around him, their fears, hopes, doubts, as clearly as if they were his own. Turning to Lyra, he saw her not as an enemy, but as a being driven by duty and compassion, burdened by responsibilities far beyond her years. "You feel it too," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Don't you?" He nodded, unable to find words. For the first time, he truly understood her, and she understood him. Just as the experiment seemed to succeed, disaster struck. An unknown force attacked the facility, deploying advanced weaponry that neither humans nor Zentari had seen before. Chaos erupted as explosions rocked the ground, sending debris flying in every direction. Amidst the pandemonium, Theo spotted Lyra shielding one of her injured scientists, her normally composed demeanor cracking under the strain. Without hesitation, he rushed to her side, firing blindly at their attackers. "Who are they?" he shouted over the din. Lyra shook her head, her eyes wide with shock. "Not my people. Not yours. Someone else entirely." As the invaders closed in, Theo realized the truth. The cosmic anomaly Lyra had warned them about wasn't just approaching, it was already here. And it had allies. The invaders moved with terrifying precision, their sleek, insectoid forms glinting ominously under the twin suns. Their weapons emitted a piercing whine before unleashing bolts of violet energy that tore through metal and flesh alike. Panic surged through the ranks of both humans and Zentari as they scrambled to mount a defense, but it quickly became clear that conventional tactics were useless against this new threat. Lyra grabbed Theo's arm, pulling him toward cover behind an overturned piece of machinery. "We need to retreat," she shouted, her voice laced with urgency. "They're not here to negotiate, they're here to destroy." Theo hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to stay and fight. But one look at Lyra's face told him she wasn't suggesting retreat out of fear, it was strategy. Reluctantly, He nodded. Fine. But we can't leave anyone behind. Together, they coordinated a desperate evacuation, shouting orders over the chaos. Humans and Zentari worked side by side for the first time in the conflict, their newfound understanding forged by the harmonizers lending them an eerie synchronicity. Soldiers who had once been enemies now shielded each other from incoming fire, their shared goal overriding centuries of animosity. As they retreated deeper into the facility, Theo noticed something peculiar about their attackers. They weren't targeting equipment or resources, they were systematically destroying the harmonizers. Every orb they could find was obliterated without hesitation, reduced to shards of smoking metal. They don't want us to understand each other, Theo muttered, realization dawning on him. Whoever they are, they thrive on division. Lyra clenched her fists, her expression darkening. Which means they've been watching us for some time. Planning this. Before Theo could respond, a deafening roar shook the ground beneath their feet. The source of the sound revealed itself moments later, a massive, biomechanical creature lumbering into view. Its body seemed to be made of living metal, its limbs shifting and reshaping with every step. Glowing red eyes scanned the battlefield, locking onto any movement with predatory focus. Great, Theo muttered, raising his rifle despite knowing it would do little good. Now we've got a giant alien monster to deal with too. Lyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached for a small device strapped to her wrist, a communicator. With swift motions, she activated it, speaking rapidly in her native tongue. After a moment, her shoulders sagged slightly in relief. My flagship is en route, she said. But it won't get here in time to save everyone. We need to hold them off. Theo glanced around at the dwindling numbers of their combined forces. Most were injured, and morale was crumbling fast. Against such overwhelming odds, holding the line felt like a suicide mission. Yet, looking at Lyra, he saw no trace of surrender in her eyes, only determination. All right, he said firmly, gripping his weapon tighter. Let's make them regret picking this fight. What followed was sheer chaos. The Human-Zentari alliance fought valiantly, using whatever makeshift defenses they could muster. Grenades, plasma rifles, even improvised traps, all were employed in a frantic bid to buy time. For a brief moment, it almost seemed like they might succeed. Then the biomechanical behemoth unleashed its true power. A beam of searing light erupted from its maw, carving a path of destruction through the facility. Walls crumbled, support beams collapsed, and screams filled the air as soldiers were caught in the blast. Amidst the carnage, Theo spotted Jax pinned beneath a fallen girder, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. Theo! Jax yelled, struggling to free himself. Go! Get out of here! No way in hell! Theo shot back, sprinting toward him. He grabbed the edge of the girder, straining against its weight. Just as he thought he couldn't budge it, a pair of glowing hands joined his. Lyra grunted with effort, her strength far greater than expected, and together they managed to lift it enough for Jax to crawl free. Thanks, Jax gasped, clutching his side. Guess I owe you, and her one. There'll be plenty of time for gratitude later, Lyra snapped, already turning back toward the fray. Right now, we need to move. They regrouped with the remaining survivors, forming a last-ditch defensive line near the facility's exit. The biomechanical creature loomed closer, its movements deliberate and menacing. As it approached, Theo noticed something strange. Embedded within its chest was a pulsating core, radiating the same violet energy as the attacker's weapons. That's its weak point, he shouted, pointing. If we can hit that, maybe we can stop it. Yura's eyes narrowed. Easier said than done. It's heavily armored. We'd need something powerful enough to penetrate. An idea sparked in Theo's mind. Grabbing a nearby soldier, he barked out instructions. Get me every explosive we've got left. And someone rig up a remote detonator. While the others scrambled to comply, Theo turned to Lyra. I'm going to draw its attention. When I give the signal, blow it sky high. Her eyes widened in alarm. Are you insane? You'll be killed. He offered her a grim smile. Maybe. But if it works, we all live. If it doesn't, he trailed off, shrugging. Well, at least I went down swinging. Before she could argue further, he darted out into the open, firing wildly at the creature to provoke it. The plan worked too well. The beast roared in fury, charging after him with terrifying speed. Theo dodged and weaved, leading it closer to the explosives hidden among the rubble. "Now, Lyra!" he screamed, diving for cover just as the detonator clicked. A deafening explosion rocked the area, sending a shock wave rippling outward. Flames engulfed the creature, its metallic body twisting and contorting as the core destabilized. For a moment, it looked like the battle might finally be over. But then, the flames subsided, revealing the creature still standing, wounded, but far from defeated. Worse yet, reinforcements were pouring in, swarming the facility like ants converging on prey. "We can't keep this up," Jax rasped, clutching his injured side. "We're out of options." Lyra stared at the approaching horde, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, she grabbed Theo's hand and pulled him toward a nearby corridor. "Follow me. There's another way." The corridor led to a hidden chamber deep within the facility, accessible only through a series of ancient-looking mechanisms. Lyra manipulated them with practiced ease, muttering under her breath as panels slid open to reveal a cavernous space beyond. Inside stood what appeared to be an enormous, dormant machine, its surface etched with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with blue light. "What is this?" Theo asked, awestruck. Lyra hesitated, her gaze somber. "It's a relic from my people's past, a weapon of immense power. But activating it comes at a cost." She didn't elaborate, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Whatever this machine was, it required more than just technical skill to operate. It demanded sacrifice. Theo placed a hand on her shoulder, surprising even himself with the gesture. "Whatever it takes, we'll do it together." For the first time since the invasion began, Lyra smiled, a genuine, heartfelt expression that lit up her entire face. "Thank you, Theo Alden." Together, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. But unknown to them, the invaders had already breached the chamber, their leader emerging from the shadows with a chilling proclamation. "You think you're the only ones who know how to use relics of the past?" And with that, the stakes escalated once again, plunging both sides into a race against time and destiny. The leader of the invaders stepped into the light, revealing a figure clad in dark, flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with an oily sheen. Their face was obscured by a mask etched with runes that pulsed faintly with the same violet energy as their weapons. Behind them, more of their kind poured into the chamber, forming a semicircle around Lyra and Theo. "You've made a grave mistake," the leader hissed, their voice distorted and hollow, as if spoken through layers of static. "This relic belongs to no one, not your kind, not hers. It is older than both our civilizations combined." Lyra's grip tightened on her weapon, though she kept her stance calm. "Then why are you here? If it's not yours, why destroy everything in your path to claim it?" The leader tilted their head, the movement eerily mechanical. "Because we understand its true purpose. To unite all life under one banner, or eradicate those who resist." They gestured toward the massive machine, its blue glow flickering ominously. "And now, thanks to your meddling, we must act swiftly." Before either Lyra or Theo could respond, the invaders lunged forward, their movements unervingly synchronized. The battle resumed with renewed ferocity, but this time, the odds felt insurmountable. Outnumbered and outgunned, even the combined efforts of humans and Zentari seemed futile. As chaos erupted around them, Lyra turned to Theo, urgency blazing in her galaxy-filled eyes. "We don't have much time. The activation sequence requires 2 operators, one for each side of the machine. But once started, there's no stopping it. Are you ready?" Theo hesitated only for a moment before nodding. "Let's end this." They split up, rushing to opposite ends of the relic. Panels lit up beneath their hands, responding to their touch with bursts of energy. Ancient symbols scrolled across holographic displays, translating themselves into languages they could understand. The machine hummed louder, vibrating through the chamber like a heartbeat growing stronger with every passing second. Meanwhile, Jax and the remaining survivors fought desperately to hold off the invaders. Bullets ricocheted off metallic carapaces, plasma blasts illuminated the dim space, and cries of pain echoed through the cavern. Despite their dwindling numbers, something miraculous began to happen. Humans and Zentari worked together seamlessly, their connection forged by the harmonizers amplifying their coordination. For the first time, they truly felt like allies. Back at the relic, Lyra and Theo exchanged determined glances across the room. Sweat dripped down their faces, their bodies trembling from the strain of channeling so much power. The machine roared to life, its core glowing brighter and brighter until it threatened to blind everyone present. Suddenly, the masked leader broke through the defensive line, charging straight toward Lyra with murderous intent. Before they could reach her, Theo leapt into their path, tackling them to the ground. They struggled fiercely, the leader's strength far greater than expected. But Theo refused to yield, driven by a singular thought: protect her. With a final surge of effort, he managed to knock the mask loose, revealing the face beneath, a humanoid creature with skin like molten glass and eyes burning with pure malice. In that instant, Theo realized the truth. These invaders weren't just another species, they were remnants of an ancient empire bent on domination, corrupted by their own hubris. "You'll never win," Theo growled, pinning them down. "No matter what you do, people will always fight back. Always." The leader snarled, but before they could retaliate, a deafening pulse emanated from the relic, knocking everyone, including Theo, off their feet. When the dust settled, the invaders lay motionless, their forms dissolving into ash as the relic's energy consumed them. Exhausted but victorious, Theo stumbled over to Lyra, who stood beside the now dormant machine. Her armor was scorched, her hair disheveled, but she still radiated an aura of quiet strength. Together, they surveyed the aftermath, survivors tending to the wounded, humans and Zentari embracing instead of exchanging blows. It was a scene neither had dared to hope for. "You did it," Theo said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "We did it." Lyra shook her head, smiling faintly. "Not yet. This is just the beginning. There's still so much work to be done, to heal, to rebuild, to prevent this from ever happening again." He nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Turning to face the gathered crowd, he raised his voice. "Today, we proved that unity is possible, even between enemies. Let this be the start of something new. Something better." Cheers erupted from both sides, echoing through the chamber like a promise. For the first time in years, there was hope. Weeks later, a formal treaty was signed aboard Lyra's flagship. Humans and Zentari pledged to cooperate, sharing resources and knowledge to ensure mutual survival. The harmonizers became a symbol of their alliance, distributed among both populations to foster understanding and empathy. As for Theo and Lyra, their bond deepened beyond anything either had anticipated. What began as admiration evolved into something far greater: trust, respect, and eventually, love. Though their worlds were vastly different, they found common ground in their shared determination to create a better future. On the day of the treaty signing, Lyra approached Theo with a small, intricately carved box. Opening it revealed a pendant shaped like a starburst, glowing softly with the same blue energy as the relic. "This belonged to my ancestors," she explained, placing it around his neck. "It signifies unity, a reminder that even the smallest spark can ignite change." Theo smiled, reaching up to clasp her hand. "Thank you. For everything." Her lips curved into a radiant smile, lighting up her entire face. "No, Theo Alden. Thank you." As they stood together, surrounded by friends and comrades from both species, it was clear that their journey was far from over. But for the first time, they faced the future not as adversaries, but as partners, in war, in peace, and in love. And somewhere, amidst the stars, the cosmos itself seemed to shine a little brighter.